Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. My name is Nick Zulovich, part of the team at Cherokee Media Group and senior editor of Subprime Auto Finance News, and pleased to welcome you into our session entitled Drive Efficiency, Automating Auto Loan Ops Without Adding Headcount. So we're so glad you are here to join us, and we welcome in our special expert, Brenna De Santiago, who is head of marketing with Encapture. And as we get into our session, wanted to let you know that we are recording our webinar today. So keep watch of your inbox for a link to that recording and to share it with your teammates and other folks at your shop. And after Brenna goes through her prepared presentation, if you have any questions or throughout our session today, just use the chat function here on the Zoom platform, and we'll get to those questions after Brenna's prepared a presentation. And just as a brief introduction, Brenna De Santiago is the head of marketing within Encapture, a machine learning platform that accelerates funding times, improves loan margins, and reduces regulatory risks for banks, credit unions, and fintech lenders. So please welcome in Brenna De Santiago with Encapture. Brenna, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Nick. What a great introduction. I'm really happy to be here. You said it all. We're going to be talking about automating the auto loan operational process without adding headcount today, and really talking about how to drive efficiency within your financial institution. I will get us kicked off. Like Nick said, I'm the head of marketing here at Encapture. Spent about 4 years on our team. Who is Encapture? What do we do? We're an AI-powered document automation platform, and we work with banks and credit unions to streamline lending workflows. So really anything that is document intensive across the financial institution. I'm sure you can think of a million different workflows that are document intensive. We work with lenders to help use automation to streamline those workflows. And really, what does document automation do for auto lenders in general? In Encapture, we work with over 1,000 financial institutions, like I said, within their lending teams to help free up compliance capacity, boost their lending efficiency, and ensure consistent data quality. Those 3 things happen when you're able to partner with an automation platform that allows you to spend less time on manual document handling, less time at looking at documents with the manual stare and compare, and really allows your team to do more of the human work and automation to do that machine work for your team. So we work with lots of different financial institutions, all from community banks to larger financial institutions as well, who have varying auto loan volumes, but there's always a need for efficiency and growth within those workflows. So before we get into exactly how our document process works, let's just dive into a little bit of the landscape right now, which I know everybody on this call is probably feeling a lot of these pain points. The banks and credit unions that we're working with, they have this huge pressure to grow their customer base. That hasn't changed and that's not going anywhere. They need to continue to increase loan volume. But at the same time, there's a ton of competitive threats from the big guys, from bigger fintechs, and specifically with community banks or smaller lenders, they really need to keep up with those big guys in order to grow their customer base. We also know there's a huge rising uncertainty with the economy, with the current political landscape, with regulations. There's a ton going on with interest rates, loan volumes, tariffs, if you want to throw that in, which that's not where I'm going today. But there's so much that our customers are struggling with maintaining and keeping up with at their financial institution, specifically in auto lending. And then there's my least favorite term in the world: teams must do more with less. Honestly, we should be doing less with less these days, and that's what automation is allowing you to do. It's not maintainable to use the same amount of staff you have, plus increase your loan volume, plus increase your data quality to comply with regulations, plus combat the rising interest rates. It's just a problem that is unfixable. So we know that this pain is being felt by a lot of our customers. Plus, specifically, with auto lending, we know like loan packages are super messy. We know funding processing times are really stare and compare, very manual, like I said, when we know data integrity is a huge risk. We also know local talent is super hard to find. There's a lot of retirements, turnover within these teams, and the auto lenders that we're working with, they're just struggling. They're at that point where they need to bring in an automation partner to help ease some of this burden. We also know that in response to that, like I said, automation is the next step. Talking to lenders 2, 3 years ago, talking about automation, AI, AI is everywhere these days. There was a lot more risk a couple of years ago, but now we've seen these trends where financial institutions, they're ready to go, they're ready to adopt this automation. So about 88% of financial institutions are increasing their automation spending over the next 3 years. That's just a huge indicator across the board that if you're not investing in automation, you are going to be the one left behind. Your competitors, they're already using it, they're already implementing it, and there's no way to keep up with that on a manual basis or to just hire more bodies at the problem. We also know that in general, 20% of banks have implemented machine learning, which machine learning is one of the core technologies that Encapture uses in our software. So again, showing that there is a little bit more movement across the board in this foundational understanding of what automation can do. And then our favorite topic, AI, generative AI. 28% of banks are planning to implement generative AI tools for the first time this year. I'm sure every single conference you go to is talking about AI, how to use that, how to stay on top of things. And like I said, the trends are starting. People are already turning to those tools. About 1/3 of financial institutions are using intelligent document processing, which at Encapture's core is what we do with document. We use IDP to streamline the document heavy workflows. Nick, quick question. Just curious if you're seeing, a lot of the banks and credit unions that you're talking to, are they turning to automation right now, or they still have that fear and that risk?
It's definitely been a gradual uptick over time. There's other measurements of digital adoption that shows that while it's kind of the trajectory isn't as steep as it was probably 3 to 4 years ago, it's still a gradual climb. So I think that's a positive sign for
Mhm.
uh, the industry itself, that there's still that uptick, that it hasn't either plateaued or even softened to that extreme. And so it's definitely interesting to see, as you noted, how firms are making a concerted effort to kind of put the money behind it, that's seeing the resources are needed. And I turn it back to you, just anecdotally, as you're talking with clients, like perhaps what was it like for a time when artificial intelligence made folks bristle and apprehension and fear, and how much more have clients and just other interactions that you've had discussing artificial intelligence, how much is it now being embraced a little bit? Is How do you
Mhm.
see it kind of smoothing out to a degree?
Yeah, they're like I said, I mean, talking to our customers 2 years ago, it was we're not using AI. There's no way we're letting AI touch our data, our customers' data. It's too risky. And that sentiment has changed where it's acknowledged that we need to use automation and AI. It's a tool that is a necessary tool. And it's more about putting boundaries and structure and training in place and acknowledging that AI and automation is not going to solve everything. It's not this like plug it in, turn it on, and it fixes all of your problems at your institution. It's something that you have to start small with, put some boundaries on, some very clear guidance, and have a clear rule of when the AI does the work and when the humans do the work. Because there has to be that clear line of this is when the AI stops, this is when a human comes in and starts taking over this decisioning process, uses their judgment to clear up errors. So whatever that is. And so definitely I've seen that sentiment change, but it's some people I think are still looking for an all or nothing solution that will fix things. And like I said, I wish Encapture was that, but nothing is there to a certain extent. So it's about starting within areas where there's the biggest inefficiencies and finding those quick wins.
Indeed. Learning, I think, is the key word in all of this conversation, it would seem.
Yep, exactly. All right. Well, I'm switching gears here to how this works with Encapture and our intelligent document processing. So we have a pre-built solution that automates the indirect auto loan funding process by classifying, extracting, and validating the documents and their data. So this really ensures that funding teams receive a complete and accurate dealer jacket, which is a huge pain point for our customers. It minimizes their review time and their errors so that they can be the preferred FI for dealerships at the end of the day. So how do we do that? Encapture works with all of your existing systems. So we plug into your systems where the indirect auto documents are ready for funding. Wherever those documents live, we import those documents and that auto lending data that is involved. VIN numbers, borrower names, signatures, dates, amounts, etc. All of those things that we're looking at. We then classify those documents based on what kind of document they are, where they should be living, if a document is missing. And then we also extract those documents so we know, like I said, the VIN numbers, the borrower names, those key pieces that a human is looking at and reviewing on a daily basis. We extract those for you so that you don't have to pull those out from multiple folders, multiple documents, and spending hours doing that. And then the last step is we validate that document to make sure that it's accurate, in the right place. You're not missing a key signature and letting a customer drive a car off the lot when you're missing something and you need to call them back 3 weeks later. Those issues that come up are killer at the end of the day, and we know that we need to have this process in place to have that accurate data. So once that data is validated, we then, the huge next step is we push it back into the systems that matter. So we're talking your enterprise content management system, your loan origination system, your core systems. I've thrown a couple of examples up here just as an example. We're not limited to these systems, but these are some of the ones our customers are using and the workflow of that data. And as you all know, a dealer jacket, these documents, they don't just touch one system. They don't just touch one person. They touch all of these systems. And it can take days, hours, whatever that is for a human being to validate these. And when you've wasted that time, you're losing the deal. You're not going to be the preferred FI for the dealership at the end of the day. What does this really matter to you guys? I think the key thing is when this is helpful is when we can assemble loan documents received in a deal jacket after the individual is approved for a loan. So there's a lot of time that the loan documents are scattered, not in the right place, not collected properly. So we're able to fully put those into a tied up dealer jacket for you guys. Also classifying the loan documents received in a deal jacket, like I said, it's a lot of time there's these blob PDFs that have multiple documents in one, and it takes a human being to scroll through, see where one starts, see where one ends. A complete waste of time. That's machine work that Encapture can help with. Also helping with extracting data points for validation or seeding the loan origination system so that the funder does not have to enter the data manually. So all of this data should live in your LOS. But you shouldn't have to plug it in manually. That's just asking for errors to happen or the data to just be incomplete. And then lastly, we can help perform validations to ensure that the loan is ready for funding. So once you've run through this system, your dealer jacket, your loan is ready for funding. It's clean, accurate data, and it's pushed through all the systems that you have. Like I said, integrating is key. So we know that, top auto lenders are using these tools for their loan origination, for their loan volumes, And Encapture works with all of these guys. We have to play nice. We have to be able to pull from every single one of these to push and pull your data. So key for any automation partner that you're working with to have those easy plugins with your existing systems, not only within auto lending, but honestly across the whole enterprise. Your commercial LOS versus your consumer LOS versus your mortgage LOS versus whatever systems your team is using. It's very different from institution to institution. We know that. But the key is being able to have a partner who can plug into these systems and use those APIs, use that existing connections to streamline that data flow. All right, switching gears here to some of the outcomes that we have. So why does it matter to automate this process? A lot of the customers we work with have a if it ain't broke, don't fix it mindset, where it's working for us. Somebody is doing this manually and it's fine. But at the end of the day, that's not going to continue to win you business. It's not going to continue to raise your loan volumes. It's just going to keep things as the status quo. So what are better lending outcomes? We can help accelerate loan decisions with AI and automation. So applying intelligent document automation to the underwriting, to document verification, all of this speeds up funding while maintaining accuracy. A lot of the banks and credit unions we work with, they just simply because they don't have the time or the staff to do it, they're not able to review these loans, and they just are willing to accept the risk that comes with it and say, well, if we're not going to review 100% of the loans, we'll accept the risk that comes with that. That's not maintainable by any means. And that risk from the manual review, the human error, the bottlenecks that happen within these teams who have to automate this, there's a whole opportunity to automate the compliance checks, the document validation, and remove that human error from the process. Like I said earlier, there's AI automation is here to do machine level work, staring at two data points, making sure they're correct, and then copying and pasting one into another system is not human work. At the end of the day, our humans can be spent building relationships with customers, growing more loan volume, making sure these systems and processes are working versus staring at the data points. And when you do all of this, it allows you to scale without sacrificing that quality. Having predictable, scalable operations that grow with the team without increasing headcount is a huge pain point we're seeing for our customers. Sometimes it's an option to hire 2, 3, 4 people to help with this solution, but a lot of times we can't throw bodies at the problem, and we have to have a scalable process that can work and is repeatable. And having Sally Mae run a spreadsheet on her own and do this process, which takes 3 or 4 hours alone, times 1,000 loans a month, it's just not a great way to scale the team. All right, let's look at an example here. So one of the banks that we work with for auto lending is Truist. They were having the problem, just like I said, they were having tons of funding delays, tons of manual errors, and they had a huge auto loan volume. It was not realistic for their team. They were getting burnt out. They weren't able to hire new people who wanted to do this type of manual document review. It's not the most sexy work, and so they were having a hard time getting people to do that. So we worked with Truist to streamline their auto operations. By plugging into the existing systems that they had, we were able to cut down their document review time by 80%. So instead of having days in between their funding delays, it was just a couple hours when they found that out. By doing this, they were able to free up 5 full-time employees to really focus on what matters: dealer relationships, customer service, getting the right customers in the door at the right time, versus doing that manual review. And also the improved compliance accuracy was huge for Truist. They weren't willing to add that risk to their process, and they wanted 100% of their loans reviewed and to make sure they had no missing critical documents, so that when it was time to report on these loans, they had that compliance safety check, that accuracy 100% guaranteed. And at the end of the day, when you free up your full-time employees to do this, we hear from our customers like Truist, like these people are able to get to progress their career. They're able to get promotions now instead of just focusing on looking at these documents for funding every single day. All right. So why now? Like I hit on this a little bit earlier, but for our top auto lenders that we're working with, why is it important to have this automation partner? Like we were talking about the trends in AI. If why not wait? Why not wait until if we see if AI works, or why not wait until a couple of the big guys start using it and we feel better about it, which that does seem to be a lot of the trends in banking and credit unions is we wait for some of the bigger guys to approve and make sure it's safe and then we move forward. But like I said, there's really no time to waste. We need to ensure quality and compliance. That is a no-brainer. We have to collect and extract the data from those missing documents at intake, and having that auto-validated at the first point of touch saves so much time. And then it also maintains a full audit trail with timestamps, chain of custody. A lot of times those documents just get lost in the mix. They get lost in processing, in emails, wherever that is. And that's not at the end of the day a good experience for your customer, good experience for the dealership. So it helps provide that quality and compliance full picture as well. And then also cutting processing time. That's just what we hear. Processing time is outrageous and it's hard to deal with right now. So by extracting those key details, the VIN numbers, borrower names, amounts, signatures, with 70 to 98% accuracy, that Sally Mae, who's been running this process, won't have to go in and extract those key fields again. Can cut that exception time from 15 to 20 minutes to just 3 minutes. So a human being only has to look at the files and documents that have missing or inaccurate data fields. They don't need to look at the ones that are right. Those just move through the process. Also eliminating that manually indexing, outsourced processing costs. That's a huge win for our teams as well. Lastly, tightening document controls. So there's a lot between dealers and the financial institution where those controls go missing, and you need to be able to have a way to auto request missing documents from dealerships. It can sometimes take days or weeks to track those down. You also need to be able to prepare for e-contracting, direct to consumer growth, and then also have improved control and visibility across all channels. Nick, what do you feel like, curious, out of these kind of three bullets I put up here, quality, processing time, and document controls, do you feel like you're hearing any of the people you talk with struggling with these the most?
Absolutely, definitely, and I think each of those elements tie into what might be most most prevalent, and forgive me if it's an uncomfortable part of a potential conversation, but it's fraud prevention and data security tied in there as well. Uh, was just on another presentation here just recently, and that was the focal point of the entire conversation, was just how prevalent fraud is unfortunately in automotive nowadays. So I guess I would perhaps ask that how each of those three elements that you just described that are crucially important, that how they would enhance either fraud prevention or data security or what have you, because I would presume that that's top of mind in your client conversations as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And, in Capture, we don't do any of the decisioning related to fraud. What we do is we help bubble up the data and make sure it's accurate. So, for example, yeah, ensuring quality and compliance. Having, for example, inaccurate data or fraudulent data within your system, and then you go to report on that when it comes to time for audits, whatever federal you're reporting to. It's that risk of failing an audit because you have fraudulent data is a huge thing. It's the fees associated with compliance in those audits. So that's where we see, the fraud piece and having the clean quality data really big on the compliance piece. On the processing time, as well with fraud. Like I said, I think it's about clean data with all of these because having that clean data, being able to flag for inconsistencies, fraudulent activities, um, helps cut that processing time at the end of the day when you're not worried about the way that, a fraudulent loan could sneak in. And have that extra, a human can verify that at the end of the day, but having a machine that's trained on what fraudulent document types look like, how, that process works. It's just one more layer to catch that as well. One more layer of safety, one more layer of risk prevention. And then having tightened document controls. I think the document controls is more about process and operationally and understanding how process works from dealership to financial institution. And you can't, if you that process is a little bit gray and fuzzy, if it's not clearly defined, that just introduces the risk for fraud. And a lot of the times when we start working with customers and open up their processes, get into their systems, you see like, oh, we actually don't know where that document lives. We actually don't know where this folder is supposed to go. We just do it this way because that's the way we've been doing it. And that's a really gray, fuzzy process that introduces so much room for risk. And when those processes exist, that's the stuff that fraudsters are, is prime for them to go into. So having that clear, consistent process plus clean data is, I think, how you can fight that.
Absolutely. And to put on the hat of a consumer, I think the cutting processing time might be top of mind for them because they really are in love with that shiny pickup, or thinking about how that minivan or SUV is going to make things better for their family, and they don't want to be at the dealership for 3, 4, or 5 hours at a time. That's full confession, like how easy it is to just go on your smartphone and order something off of whatever online vendor, and then it's on your front porch within hours, if not sooner. And so that processing time is definitely another. There's been multiple studies and analysis of that the end consumer, just the expectations are is that I want to acquire a vehicle as simply as whatever other purchasing process might be like. And while purchasing a vehicle is much more complicated than clothing or what have you, there's still that consumer expectation there, and having back ends processes like these in place helps the consumer facing people, no doubt.
Exactly. And like I said at the beginning, keeping up with the competitive threats, I mean, there are starting to be auto lenders, online who do kind of offer and promise this 1, 2, 3, sign up, bam, you've got a car. And how do you compete with that? You cannot compete with that if someone has to physically go into your dealership, sign 20 pieces of physical paper and spend 4 hours doing that. There's no way to compete with those guys, especially in this I want it now day and age.
For sure.
All right, wrapping up here. Basically, tying all this in a bow, what is it? How can you lend smarter, lend faster? Like we just said, Nick, how can you make this better for your customers at the end of the day? Because that's what we care about. We care about a smooth relationship with our customers, them being happy, them coming back. We also care about having smooth, consistent relationships with our dealers. So at the end of the day, automation like this can really help reduce that friction and free up the time for borrower engagement. If a human being is taking the time to come into your dealership, you want your people spending that face-to-face time with them, not processing documents in the back. And when you have that, you can really build trust through a consistent error-free process. That's a huge thing we hear too, is just about member community, and trust that you build there. If you are known for taking 4 hours to process, or even worse, weeks to process, if you're known for having to call back borrowers or customers because something was missing and chasing them down, that's not building a trust. That's not building a consistent process, like I said. And then really accelerating the funding time without sacrificing compliance or care. Introducing risk is not an option for a lot of the lenders that we're talking to. So having the funding process Accelerated is a huge way to not sacrifice that compliance, go into your audits prepared, feeling like you don't have anything to hide and that you have good, clean data. And lastly, all of this really leads to you scaling your operations, strengthening the dealer and member relationships, growing those loan volumes, having those good conversations, and moving that process forward. Any last comments here, Nick, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I guess again would reiterate that if you do have questions for Brennan De Santiago of Encapture, just use the chat function here on the Zoom platform, and we'll get to those.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If you guys have any questions, feel free to scan the QR code here, go into our auto lending solution site with a couple examples. I'm happy here as an Encapture resource, so please reach out to me as well on LinkedIn or anything like that if you'd like to learn more.
Again, our webinar title again today is Drive Efficiency, Automating Auto Loan Ops Without Adding Headcounts. And as we go through a couple of questions that have come in, Brenna, just again, you referenced the client example of how Truist measured their successes using automation. What again can be some of those KPIs to measure improvement and justify an investment, especially for shops that might not have a lot of resources to make an investment, to make sure that they're using their resources in the best way possible?
Mm-hmm. The biggest KPI that was easiest to measure is time at the end of the day. And it's really easy to kind of back into that math. You think, okay, you talk to somebody and typically they might say, oh, well, it takes us, it takes the member on my team 10 minutes to, process a loan. Then you talk to that team member and they say, well, actually, I have to go in and I have to open this folder. I have to log into this system. I have to extract it. I have to upload it here. And then usually there's a missing document that, Johnny Smith forgets. So I have to go back here. And by the time, you've added all that up, it's taking an hour for that person to, review that loan. So let's say it's taking 1 hour for a loan. You're doing 500 loans a month, 500 hours a month that you're spending on this, for example. And then, by using a tool like Encapture, if you can reduce that time from 500 hours a month to that person only looking at the dealer packages with errors, missing documents, example, get them down to 50 hours a month, for example. Like that's a huge reduction in time that they're saving looking at those documents. So I think for the easiest thing to convince other team members of this ROI is time. And at the end of the day, time is money. That time is spent for that person to grow your loans. Like I said, talk to your customers, whatever that is.
Indeed. And how important is it to keep in mind that while big operations might be using AI tools, that it can also help smaller institutions as well. They might have a smaller footprint, maybe perhaps they only operate within a single state or what have you. That how important is it to keep in mind that smaller shops can use AI as well?
Yeah, I think that's a huge like misunderstanding that still exists in the world of like automation, AI, that's just for the big guys. We're just a little, mom and pop shop. We do this, we'd rather do it manually. We'd rather stick to the status quo. That is definitely still a sentiment that's out there. But I would say is, even if you do have a small team and you're doing 100 auto loans a month, still 100 auto loans times 1 hour, that's 100 hours. So still thinking about it as time and inefficiencies at the end of the day, because those little inefficiencies, they add up. And that's the reason why, your community bank, for example, is losing business to the bigger guys because it does take longer because you're not able to offer the same level of community service, whatever that is. So I think it all does come back to time as well. And for the smaller community banks and lenders that we work with, it's really about starting with something doable, a small process that they can automate, find a quick win for, and then move on. We work with one community bank in Mississippi. We automated their HMDA compliance process, which was a small process for them. They didn't have a ton of ton of HMDA loan volumes, but by doing that, they were able to see those quick wins and then automate another process. So I think it's about starting small and not getting too intimidated by the bigger, picture of AI too.
Closing moments here on our webinar, drive efficiency and automating auto loan ops without adding headcount with Brenna DeSantiago, who is the head of marketing with Encapture, a machine learning platform that accelerates funding time, improves loan margins, and reduces regulatory risk for banks, credit unions, and fintech lenders. And Brenna, just to round out our time today, just looking forward to say the next 12 months or so, just where do you see the biggest opportunities for efficiency gains as the more of those little victories as you just mentioned? Just how do you see the path going forward to ongoing efficiency?
Yeah, I see, the next 12 months, I think just with the how fast AI and automation is moving, we're going to see really big changes. I think we're going to see a lot of the tools and, like I said, the systems that we're using. That's the core of all of these financial institutions is their systems, and we're going to see a lot of these systems talking to each other more. Like I said, there's no perfect glue that makes all of your systems talk and all of the data perfect, but that's going to be a huge trend where the data can no longer live in silos or within just one department within one system. The data needs to be accurate in all places, and we need to be able to have that view of a customer, of a loan, of the life cycle, and that needs to be accurate when we're looking at that. So, I think there'll be the increased use of automation tools to tie those systems together. And starting with, for example, the auto lending space, just starting with one tool that you use, your loan origination system, for example, finding where your team is spending the most time, and starting with that process, whatever that is, whether it's the documents, it's happening at funding, wherever that is, it's a paper process, an e-contract. I think it's finding where the biggest inefficiency is and starting there.
That's Brenna DeSantiago, who is the head of marketing with Encapture. Brenna, thank you so much for leading us down the digital road that auto is taking, and how Encapture can be along on that journey. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Nick.
And on behalf of all of us at Cherokee Media Group, we thank you so very much for joining us, and we look forward to having you again next time.